Welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be teaching you why change is so hard and how to step by step actually make change easier for you. Let's dive in. To most of us, we all want to change. We all want to be better. Like, you're listening to this podcast because you are at least someone who knows that you want to change and evolve and grow in some sort of way. But then the next question is, why the hell is that so hard to do? Right? Why is it so hard for us to change when we want consciously to change? And so I'm going to take you through something that's called the emotional cycle of change so you can understand kind of what's going on inside of you as you're actually trying to change. And if you're someone who's really bad at following through, if you're somebody who's really good at starting something but really terrible at finishing it and seeing it all the way through, what I'm going to teach you, if you can really understand it, will be a game changer. If you're sitting at home, I would recommend that you take out pen and paper. If you're driving, take some mental notes as we go through this. In order to create the life you want, you're going to have to change. And we all know that. That's why you're here. You are not unconscious zombie walking around anymore. You're the type of person that's going, okay, I want something to be different. And I know that I need to change. That's why I'm here listening to how to change my mindset. You're going to have to change. You understand that. There's no way around it. And if you do not change, you know that your life will not change. And there is a psychological cycle that you will go through in almost any change that you have. And there were two psychologists, Don Kelly and Daryl Conner, who developed this model that really deals specifically with the emotional aspects of change and what it looks like. And if you can understand it and you can identify where you are, it will make it easier for you to go, you know what? Okay, I can see I'm at stage 2 right now. I just need to keep going. Oh, you know what? I can see I'm at stage 3 right now. I just need to keep going. Oh, I'm at stage 4. Things are starting to work out. I just need to keep on going, right? And so when you can understand what stage that you're in, you can understand how you need to keep pushing through and how to do so. You know, one of the things that I always hear from people a lot in what I do is, man, Rob, I'm pretty good at starting things, but I almost always give up. Like, I'm really good at like starting a workout plan, but I almost always give up like a month into it. And there's this thing called the emotional cycle of change, and there's 5 different stages in the emotional cycle of change. And you can use this to understand and anticipate the emotional responses that you're going to feel. Like, okay, I'm in stage 2. I know that stage 3 is coming. I know that it's actually going to get worse before it gets better. So at least I can prepare myself. And so when you understand each stage in detail, you can better prepare yourself. You can use these tools to then cope and work through your changing emotions, okay? So there's 5 different stages in the emotional cycle of change. The first one we're all very familiar with, and it's stage 1. And stage 1 is called uninformed optimism. In this stage, you're excited about the change, right? Like, whenever we're going to do something, like, we might be a little bit nervous, but we're like, man, it's so exciting. It's so exciting. I'm going to do this new thing. I'm going to change myself. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to gain muscle. I'm going to get sexy. I'm going to look fucking amazing in a bikini, right? Whatever it is that you're working towards. But it's the reason why you're so excited about it is because you are not aware of the difficulties that you could and probably will face ahead. And so you're only seeing all of the good stuff. And this is the reason why people are all excited in the beginning of starting something new. One thing that you can do to capitalize your excitement here is to make an actual letter to yourself, to journal why you are doing this. Right? It goes back to, like, when you think about quitting, remember why you started. So when you're in that moment of like excitement, really good to put all of your excitement down on a piece of paper, what you're looking to do it and why this is so important to you to make this change. At the first stage, people are filled with enthusiasm and excitement, and you see all of the potential benefits of the change. But the reason why you're so excited is because you see all of the benefits, but you're yet to experience any of the costs. Because when you say yes to something, you're going to say no to something else. If you're going to make a change, there are going to be some costs. There's going to have to be some shifts in your life. And at the stage of uninformed optimism, it's filled with a sense of positive emotion and excitement. And I can't wait to go ahead and do it. So imagine all of the benefits that you have and how exciting it is. But you haven't seen all the costs. And everything has a cost, as I said. But then what happens? We all go into stage 2. excitement starts to fade, the more that you learn about how long you have to go and all of the things you're going to have to fight through and all of the work it's going to take and what it's going to be like. And you can start to see a little bit further in on the journey, which brings us to what's stage 2. And stage 2 is called informed pessimism. So the first one is uninformed optimism. Uninformed, you don't really know, but you're optimistic. Quickly, and some of us quicker than others, we get to stage 2, which is we become pessimistic. We are now informed a little bit, and we have a little bit of an idea of what it's going to take, and now we start to get pessimistic. As the changes progress, and we start to see what happens and what we have to work through and how long it could take to get to where we want to be, negative emotions can start to come up. And this is where we really start to shift and go from, once again, optimistic to pessimistic. The benefits that you saw in stage 1, they don't really seem as real. And what you were excited about in stage 1, you're not as excited about. Because you're not even seeing the things to be excited about, you're seeing the costs. You start to see the costs more and the benefits less. And this stage is where you really start to get frustrated. You start to get a little bit more anxious about what's coming up, about the fears and the limiting beliefs. And you're starting to now get the desire to quit. You're starting to think like, maybe this wasn't for me. Maybe maybe this wasn't for me. Maybe I made a mistake. Right? And this is where usually stage 2 and stage 3 are where most projects fail. And this is usually where like, yeah, maybe I took the wrong path. Yeah, I took the wrong path. Or this is going to take way too much time. I don't have this much time. I have a full-time job. I have children, right? And as reality starts to set in, the positive emotions that you did have start to become negative emotions. You went from optimistic to pessimistic really damn quick, didn't you? This is what happens when they have New Year's resolutions. It's like, yes, the first day, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to drink my water. I'm going to do my meditating. And by day 3, they're like, screw this. That's a lot of work. The benefits of the change seem less real and they seem less important. And the costs that come and what you need to do become much more apparent. And so we start to question if the benefits of us changing are worth the effort that it's going to take. And so people may start to question the worth of the effort and really start to find and look for reasons to abandon the effort that they need to put in. And it sounds terrible, right? Damn, now I'm pessimistic. It became pessimistic so quick. It sounds terrible. It couldn't possibly get worse. Well, it does. So if you fight through stage 2, you then get into stage 3, which has been titled in one of my favorite titles, The Valley of Despair. So it's the valley. It's the lowest of lows. It's the lowest part of the cycle. If you didn't quit in stage 2 and you are going to quit, you're definitely quitting in stage 3 because it gets lower. It gets more pessimistic. It gets harder. This stage is where people experience the pain of change and the benefits. It's just, I'm feeling the pain of all of this change. And the benefits, they just seem light years away. They seem unimportant. The easiest thing to do at this point is quit. It's so easy to quit. It's easy to quit and return to your old ways of doing things. At the lowest point of the emotional cycle of change is a valley of despair. And this is where many people are going to give up. And this is where the change, the pain is really felt more than anything else. And the benefits are just like, nah, they're not happening. There's no way that I see how other people could do this, but there's no way that I could do that thing. And it's easy to quit and to want to quit and to go back to your old ways. But the problem with all of that is giving up whatever you decide to give up. And you're like, well, you know what? Maybe this business wasn't the right business for me, but there's this other business I've been thinking of. The reason why that other business sounds better than your current business is because your current business, you're in the valley of despair. The other idea for a business, you're in uninformed optimism. And I guarantee you, if you go and you decide to switch and start another company, you're going to be all excited for a little while. And then what's going to happen? That's stage 1. Stage 2, stage 3, you're eventually going to find yourself in the valley of despair. It's just the stages that we go through as we're trying to change anything and trying to change ourselves. And so in the valley of despair, it's very easy to quit because of the fact that you see something else like a shiny object that seems way better because you're in stage 1 with that other thing of like, oh my God, uninformed optimism. That must have been the thing I was supposed to go for. And this is where most people give up. The reason why the grass looks green on the other side is because you're in the valley of despair And the other thing that you're looking at is stage 1. It's uninformed optimism. Oh my God, it's amazing. So what you have to do here is you have to just keep pushing. It's important to have a really compelling vision of the future that you want to achieve and why you want to achieve it. Not just, hey, this is the thing that I want, but it's also like, this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for my family. I'm doing it for my children. I'm doing it for the world. Whatever it is that you're working towards, you have to have a really compelling why, because it's so damn easy to quit and it's so much harder to keep pushing. This is also why it's important for you to journal in stage 1, because when you think about quitting, remember why you started. Go back and read the reasons why you started. What your vision is, what you're doing this for, who you're doing this for, why you're doing this. So you just have to fight through, knowing that if you fight through long enough, eventually you're going to get to stage 4, and stage 4 is where things start to get better, and stage 5 is where everything's amazing. Well, it's where things start to become amazing. We'll put it that way. Stage 4 is now informed optimism. So you went from informed pessimism to informed optimism. Informed pessimism is like, oh my God, I now know what I didn't know and I don't know if I can do it. Informed optimism is, I now know what I didn't know before and I think I can do it. Like at this stage is the possibility of success starts to increase. You start to get into much more of a positive state because you start becoming more confident in yourself and trusting in yourself. Success is starting to seem possible. And the benefits of what you're doing are starting to show. Because sometimes you got to plant a seed and it takes months for that seed to grow. And so sometimes before you get to stage 4, you're not really seeing the benefits yet. They haven't really popped up. And so now you're starting to see the benefits of your actions a month ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago. And the cost of the change is actually starting to seem worth it. And it's starting to seem easier. And you now are starting to see a little bit of the fruits of your vision, just a little bit, enough to get you excited. You're starting to see those breadcrumbs of success in front of you. You're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel and going, you know what? Damn it, I think I can do it. I think I can get myself there. So that's stage 4, which is informed optimism. And then stage 5 is what we're all trying to get to, which is success and fulfillment. Success and fulfillment is the final stage of the emotional cycle of change. It's the one that the least amount of people get to because usually somebody gives up at stage 2 or stage 3. Like 90% of people are going to give up at stage 2 or stage 3. Very few people are going to push through because it's just so easy to give up. It's so easy to do nothing. It's so easy not to change. It's so easy to sit on the couch and eat ice cream compared to get yourself to go to the gym and have to push yourself. Whatever it might be that you're trying to make that change. The benefits of the new behavior in stage 5, though, are fully experienced. All of the vision that you were thinking of, you're now starting to see it. And the cost of the change is now worth it. Oh my God, I see it, I get it. And stage 5, depending on what it is for you, can take years to get to. Years. I was out to dinner 2 nights ago with my wife and this couple are also both in self-development. And the wife, we were talking about how long it takes, like how, this podcast, I had 5 years of this podcast before it really started to take off, which is like 700, 800 episodes. And we were talking about, I was like, yeah, you ever heard like the story of the Chinese bamboo? She's like, no. And I told her, and I've done episodes on it before in the past, but if you don't know the story of the Chinese bamboo, is you plant a Chinese bamboo seed. In year 1, nothing happens. Year 2, nothing happens. Year 3, nothing happens. Year 4, nothing happens. Year 5, but you've been, FYI, for the first 5 years though, you're giving it water, you're taking care of it, you're making sure it has everything that it needs. At year 5, it finally cracks out of the ground. So it takes 4 years of nothing. And then year 5, it comes out of the ground and it grows up to 80 feet in 6 weeks. That's what success is like. And so stage 5, if it's losing 10 pounds, if that's what it takes, it might be 60 days away. But if it's growing a multi-million-dollar business, it might be 5 years down the road. It might be 7 years down the road. It might be 3 years. It might be 10 years down the road. But at this point, the success and fulfillment, this is where you're seeing all of the cost of the change and it's now perceived as worth it. You did all the work and you're like, damn it, I'm so glad that I didn't give up on myself. right? It doesn't seem worth it until you cross the finish line. And the actions that were once really difficult for you in changing, like you had to push yourself and force yourself to do what needed to be done, those actions that were once difficult are routine. They're habits. It's just become who you are now, which is what's awesome. Like you are now the person that does this thing, whatever it is. You're now the person that goes into the office and makes 100 phone calls a day, or you're now the person that goes to the gym 5 times a week, or you just become the person that does the thing that you always wanted to do, and success comes from that, whatever success means to you. And this marks the final stage of the emotional cycle of change. And the benefits of all of the new behavior are fully experienced. You can see, and you can go, you know what, it was worth it. I'm so glad that I did it. But you have to understand that no matter what it is, whether it's you getting into a new relationship, you're going to go through the emotional cycle of change. You trying to go on a journey of losing weight, you're going to go through the emotional cycle of change. You trying to build a business, the emotional cycle of change. You becoming a parent, the emotional cycle of change. You're always going to go through this psychological, emotional cycle of change with everything that you do. You have to just understand stage 1 is this. Stage 2 is this. It's going to be hard. Stage 3 is going to be this. It's going to be even harder. Stage 4, Stage 5, those are the stages that I'm fighting to get to. And so if you can just start to understand the emotional cycle of change, you can really start to understand yourself more and anticipate what could be coming up in the future, so therefore you're not caught off guard. So that is what it looks like for you to grow, to change, and to become the person that you want to become. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on your Instagram stories. Tag me in it, Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. And I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make someone else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to teach you how to forgive yourself and how to forgive others so that you can have more calm, peace, and happiness in your life. Let's dive in. What I'm going to talk to you about today can absolutely change your life and make your life so much easier. It's just so much weight that will be lifted off of your shoulders when you learn how to do this. It will bring so much peace into your life. And it is extremely simple, but just because it's simple doesn't mean that it's easy. And so this is going to be a really, really deep episode. And I'm going to talk to you about how to forgive anyone in your life and also how to let go so you don't carry burdens with you anymore. It's like that quote, the mountains that you're carrying, you're only meant to climb. And so today we're just going to talk about forgiveness. We're going to talk about that. And I've talked with many people who have said, when I'm like, hey, you need to learn how to forgive, they're like, no, I would never forgive them. You don't know what they did to me. Forgiveness is never for the other person. Forgiveness is for you, so you can let go of the burden of holding on to it. And the way that I've changed my perception, because for the longest time I held grudges and I didn't want to forgive people and all of that, but it's really hard to have the profession that I have and not just every single day be humbled by the experiences and the life that people have, all of the things they have to go through in their childhood and in their life and the stuff that they go through. It's really hard not to have compassion for people. And what I have come to realize and truly believe deep down in my soul is that at the core of every person that you meet is innocence. Every single person at their core, if you were to be able to push away all of the stuff that's in the way that they think is them, that's not truly them, all of that stuff at the core of them is good. And stuff happens in life that takes them away from that. But it doesn't mean that's not who they truly are. It just means that they are lost in some sort of way. You know, we don't necessarily stay innocent. Things happen. Trauma happens. Society happens. The world happens. And what we're all searching for in this world is peace. We're not searching for happiness. That's a fleeting emotion. It's here. Sometimes you could be happy. You wake up and you're happy in the morning. You had a great cup of coffee. Someone cuts you off on the way to work and it just screws up your entire day. You get pissed, right? That's happiness. Peace is just a state of being. I remember one time I was working with a coach years ago and he's like, what do you want in your life? And I was like, you know what I want more of? I want more of that feeling. And that's really just the feeling of peace, right? But you cannot have peace in your life if you see the world as bad and you see other people as guilty. You just can't have it because you're constantly on guard. And even if you're not mentally, don't feel like you're mentally on guard, your body is on guard. Your shoulders are always tense. Your eyebrows are all just kind of, just a little bit. They're not relaxed. They're not relaxed. You got a little bit of just a, face, and it's like sometimes you're biting down your jaw. You get TMJ, your jaw is too tight. It's like you're too tight. You got to get more loose. So you can't have peace if you see the world as guilty and bad. If you watch the news, my God, you're going to think that the world is fucking insane. So what you have to understand is that the key to unlocking peace is to see the world as good and to forgive no matter what. No matter what, Rob? Yes, no matter what. No matter what. And I'm going to talk to you about why that is. It's not, once again, I said it's not easy, but is absolutely definitely going to make your life way easier. I don't want you to understand this. Anyone who has done bad to you or has hurt you in some sort of way is lost. Okay, go with me on this. Anyone who's done bad to you, anyone who's ever hurt you is lost. Anyone who does bad is lost. They do not know what they're actually doing. Because if they had the awareness to think about how their actions are affecting other people around you and they're able to feel what it feels like to be affected by them, if they were to put yourself in your shoes, they wouldn't do it. They do not know what they're actually doing. So in some sort of way, they're lost. Anyone who has hurt you is hurting themselves because they're taking actions that are bringing them further away from their true self. They are walking further off the track into the woods. They're lost in some sort of way. And so to hold on to resentment towards that person who is lost only hurts us. And so now we have a lost person and now we have a hurt person. Well, I would at least like to not be hurt anymore and let go of that. And if they want to find themselves and not be lost anymore, that's up to them. And so I don't want to hold any resentment towards people. And so for me, when something happens to me, I'll feel things and I'll feel emotions and all of that. But then I start to think about how can I just let go of this? How can I not hold resentment? How can I forgive this person? And it's like the phrase like Mark Twain says. He says, anger and resentment is the acid that burns the vessel. It's the acid that burns the vessel. It's like holding on to a hot coal and hoping that that hot coal hurts somebody else. No, you have to let it go. That's the only way. And so that anger and that resentment, it's just you're white knuckling your way through life sometimes. Like for instance, I'll give you an easy example, right? If someone breaks into your house and they steal stuff from you, you can not want to forgive them. You can be mad at them for what they did. But I promise you this, at their core, they don't want to be doing what they're doing. They don't want to be doing what they're doing. That might be a 27-year-old adult, but really what it is, it's a grown-up child in an adult body who was not loved correctly. Or it's someone who thinks that the world is not safe because their parents didn't make them feel safe. And now they feel like, well, I need to go take from other people to be able to make money, to feel more stable, to feel more safe because I've never felt that safety in my life because it was never given to me in my childhood. It's someone that's hurting. And when we can see that it's someone that's hurting, it's easy to have more empathy for that person and to have more peace. Hey, real quick, I want to introduce you to something called Mindset Mentor Plus. If you love this podcast, you will absolutely love what I'm about to talk about. I designed Mindset Mentor Plus to help you actively integrate every one of these episodes into your life. And here's how it works. With every episode of this podcast that comes out, Mindset Mentor Plus subscribers get more. You're going to get multiple page, detailed, printable worksheets, effectively a mini masterclass that's way more in depth than just this podcast. They also come with journaling questions, challenges, assignments, and so much more, so that you're not just listening to these podcasts passively, but you're actively integrating them into your life. That way you improve much faster. I also do monthly Q&A sessions in there and much, much more. If you want to learn more about it, go to mindsetmentor.com or click the link that's down in the description. And one of the things that really helped me with this, just to give you guys an idea, was I remember there was one moment, I had a coach of mine that asked me, do you hold any resentment towards your parents? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I think I've gotten over everything with my dad. I think everything's good with my mom. He's like, okay, I want you to sit with that question. I kind of sat with it and I was like, you know what? I do think I resent my dad. And so I started working through it and journaling it. And you know, for those of you that don't know my story, if this is your first episode to listen to, my parents got divorced when I was 10 because my father's an alcoholic. My father passed away when I was 15 from liver failure, from being an alcoholic. There's obviously childhood trauma that comes with having an alcoholic father. And after really sitting with it, I was like, you know what? I do resent my dad in many ways. He wasn't there for me to teach me how to be a man, how to shave, how to, you know, interact with people in the world, how any of those things. Like, he wasn't there for me in those moments. And so I started feeling that resentment. And then I was like, well, why wasn't he there for me? Why did he become an alcoholic? And I started getting deeper and deeper into it. And I was taken back in like a meditation session to think about my dad when he was a child. You know, so I was mad at the 48-year-old man who caused the trauma in my life, who was an alcoholic, who didn't overcome it, and who passed away when he was 48 years old. What I didn't see was the child that was still wounded inside of him that made him become an alcoholic and have an addiction. And so I started thinking about that, like, well, what actually happened? And if you don't know the story of that, my father, when he was 12 years old, heard a gunshot. He walked into his parents' room and his dad had just shot himself in the mouth with a shotgun. So my dad walked into the room right after his father had killed himself. And so that was 12 years old. And so once I thought of that and I put myself in my dad's place and in his shoes, I was like, oh my God, I can't have resentment towards a 48-year-old man, because what I really need to do is show love to the 12-year-old child. And it completely changed the way that I had thought about everyone else in my life and everyone that I come in contact with. And I realized that any person who shows up in a way that doesn't feel real and authentic and loving and truthful, hurts you, screws you over, steals from you, breaks your heart, whatever it might be, is a child that just has some sort of wound that they never really overcame. And when you can start to see that, you can start to have empathy for people. And that changing there is no resentment that exists inside of me for my father after realizing this. And I was like, he was just I can't imagine what that 12-year-old boy had to go through, you know? And so I can't be mad at the 48-year-old guy. What I need to do is I need to show love and energetically think about showing love to that 12-year-old child. And so you can see the adults, but you can also see the hurt child that's behind it. If you can see the hurt child that's behind it, oh my God, forgiveness is so much easier. If somebody, cheats on you, you're in a relationship with them, that has nothing to do with you. You have to realize that this has nothing to do with you. You might think that it does. It has to do with probably their lack of love for themselves, which came from a lack of love that probably came from their parents. And then, they have to go search for someone else to try to fill a void that they can't fill because their parents didn't give them the love that they wanted or deserved when they were a child. It's a search for love is what it is. It's a search for acceptance. It's a search for self-worth. That's what it is. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with a wounded child that's now an adult. There's only this. There's only insanity and there's sanity. And when I say this, when I say insanity, I don't mean like clinically insane. But what I mean is sanity is to be in a state where you do right for yourself and you do right for other people. That's what sanity is. You're doing right for yourself, you're doing right for other people. Insanity is to be in a state that hurts other people. And when you hurt others, you hurt yourself, which is also even more insanity. Because what happens is when you hurt somebody else, you carry that wrongdoing with you. Everything in this world is just basically love and fear. You've heard that before. Love is sanity. Anything that is not love is insanity, right? Love, sanity. Everything else that's not love, insanity. Everyone is just where they are, and they're doing the best that they can with what they have. And once you really understand that at your core, it's so much easier to forgive too. Everyone's doing the best they can. And if they really screwed up, that was the best that they could do in that moment. But I promise you this, if you were in their exact same shoes, you went through their exact same childhood, had their exact same parents, went through their exact same raising, and all of the millions of little teeny tiny seconds and things that have happened in their life, you would be exactly the same as them. You would make the same choices. We like to think I would never be like them if I had their life. No, you would. You would make the exact same choices. Someone's actions are always a reflection of their consciousness. When you look at, I like to look at, I'm not religious in any sort of way, but I like to look at all the different texts that are out there, the different figures that are out there and say, can I get some inspiration from this? And a good person you can take the inspiration from is whether you believe in him or not, you can just take the story if you want to, is Jesus, right? The story of Jesus being murdered. At the moment where he's being murdered, he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. He could see past their actions to the consciousness that they were and see they do not know what they're doing. They are lost. A sane person would never do those actions. Get it? So that's really what it comes down to. What our truest self should see is a sick person that's in need of healing. For in that case of the people that's murdering somebody else, that's a sick person that's in need of healing. Someone who cheats on somebody else, that's a sick person that's in need of healing. Someone who screws somebody over, steals from them, that's a sick person that's in need of healing in some way. What the ego sees is an evil person that's in need of punishing. Right? But what your truest self, if you could take a step back, is a person who is sick that needs some healing in some sort of way. And so everyone wants happiness and everyone wants peace. Even the person that's screwing you over wants peace and happiness as well. But everyone is always doing what they believe will bring them happiness and peace. And if we judge and condemn that person, we strengthen that within them. So if someone steals from me, right? And I judge and condemn that person, I strengthen that version of them that is a thief. So if someone steals from me and then I judge them and I condemn them and I call them a thief and I do whatever it is, I'm strengthening their own identity as a thief, and they're thinking in their head, I'm a thief, which then makes them more likely to create actions in the future as a thief would. So what's the best thing for me to? Release it. Let it go. That person could do whatever they want to, but I'm not going to reflect the thief back to them because I want them to hopefully be able to break that pattern that they're in. If someone's a thief and they're a cheater and they're screwing someone over, they're doing whatever it is, they don't feel good about what they did. I promise you that. Their truest self, their core, their deep consciousness behind all of it, they know that it's wrong. But if we judge that person, if we label them, it strengthens that belief that that's what they are. And they're more likely to do it again in the future. So I want to at least try to break that pattern. I want to release it for myself, and hopefully maybe they can release it in themselves so they don't do it to someone else again. Right? Because if I say it to them, they see it in themselves, and they're going to continue to keep doing the thing. Think, oh, that's who I am. I'm a thief. Oh, I'm a cheater. I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm a person who screws people over. Whatever it is. I'm not going to play a part in that thought that they have of themselves. The hardest part to do is to try to forgive and to love that person. If you could try to forgive and love somebody, it allows you to release it. And at the same time, it allows them to start releasing it as well. I remember seeing a video that one time was like a really touching video. And there was a lady whose son was murdered by, it's like this teenage boy. Her teenage son was murdered by this teenage boy for like a couple $100 or something like that. And it was a video of them in the trial. And, the kid was sentenced, whatever it was, happened. And then the mother came up, mother of the murdered son, comes up to the kid who murdered her son. And she said, I forgive you. Can I give you a hug? And then she gave him a hug, and this kid just broke down in tears. If a woman can forgive somebody who murdered her son, I'm pretty sure all of us can try to work to forgive somebody else. Because what she was able to see in that moment was that was a child that probably just wasn't loved in his childhood. I'm going to give him that love. I'm going to release it from myself and hopefully be able to release it from him as well. And so that's really what it comes down to. So that's forgiveness of other people. When we're talking about forgiving other people, we're also talking about forgiving ourselves. The hardest person to forgive a lot of times is yourself. And if you're going to be able to go on this path of forgiveness for other people, you have to do it for yourself. If other people are doing the best that they can with whatever they have, of course, you were always doing the best that you could with whatever you had. So if you did something 3 years ago and you're still beating yourself up for it, it's time for you to let it go. It's time for you to forgive that person, that version of you that you were, because you did the best that you could in that moment. And so if you're going to forgive other people, you've also got to go on the journey of starting to forgive yourself. If you can do that, man, I'm telling you this, your life will be so much more calm, so much more peaceful when you can forgive other people, you can forgive yourself, and you can just decide to go on your path and not let anything affect you no matter what it is that happens. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If this episode impacted you, please do me a favor, share it on your Instagram stories. Tag me in at Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. Also, at the same time, if you love this podcast, you'll probably love something I have that's called Mindset Mentor Plus. Mindset Mentor Plus is for every single episode that comes out of this podcast. Mindset Mentor Plus subscribers are going to get a whole lot more. So they get multiple detailed multi-page worksheets, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages sometimes, that go deeper into every single episode than just the podcast does. You can print these out, you can underline them, you can highlight them. There's also journaling questions for every single episode. There's assignments for every single episode. We do our monthly Q&A session in there as well. There's also a community of over 1,300 people that you can connect with. If you want to learn more about it, there's a website that tells you all about it. There's a video on there that I recorded for you that tells you about it as well. Just go to mindsetmentor.com. Once again, mindsetmentor.com. And the best part about the whole thing, it is less than $1 a day. So if you want to learn more about it, go to that website. And with that, I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make somebody else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Listen, you're here because you know if you want your life to be different, you have to change, right? If you want your life to change, you have to change. But then it starts getting really hard. It's not really easy to change. The key to achieving success in any area of your life comes from your ability to change yourself. And a lot of times changing yourself comes from changing your mind first, reprogramming your mind to change your old patterns, to change your old beliefs, your old programs, and your thoughts, your habits, and your beliefs are your driving forces behind your actions. And that will then determine your outcome. So if you can understand the psychology and the science that's behind mental reprogramming, then you can start to take charge of your life and create the future that doesn't look like your past. Because if you do nothing and you just continue to do the same things that you have been doing, nothing will change. Your tomorrow will look exactly like yesterday until the day you die. And so in this episode, we're going to really talk about how to reprogram your mind to kind of get anything that you want. And I'm not going to just tell you from like some foo-foo-y, woo-woo-y type of way, hey, you can get anything you want. Like I'm actually going to teach you proven psychological techniques and use scientific evidence because I'm a very skeptical person. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably are the type of person that's like that as well. And so that's probably why you're attracted to this podcast, because you're probably very skeptical, but also wanting to improve yourself. And so we're probably both skeptics. And so I'm going to show you through science and through psychology how to actually start reprogramming your brain. So the first thing that I want to talk about before I teach you how to do it is you have to really understand what it is that we're trying to change. You have to understand your mind. Before we dive into the process of reprogramming, you got to understand how the mind works, right? And so the mind consists basically of two parts when you break it down. There's the conscious mind and there's the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is responsible for just day-to-day thoughts, decisions, actions in the moment. And the subconscious mind really stores a lot of memories. It stores beliefs, it stores habits, and it kind of works very automatically. And it's, below the mind, which is why they call it the subconscious mind. Let's dive into the conscious mind first. The conscious mind is our thinking mind. It is the mind that you know that exists, that thinks throughout the day. It's the voice that you hear inside of your head. Oh man, I should go get the kids before I, go ahead and do this. Oh yeah, well that's your conscious mind. That's your thinking mind. It's where we process information. It's where we make decisions, where we talk to ourselves. But the crazy part about the conscious mind is that it accounts for roughly about 5% of our cognitive activities throughout the day. And so it's very limited. And it's just basically like, okay, tell me what to do and I'll do it. Okay, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And so you might ask yourself, like, how is it only responsible for 5%? I know all of the thoughts that I'm thinking throughout the day. Well, no, you don't. You know all of the conscious thoughts. And so this is why we can often really struggle when we are trying to change ourselves and we're trying to change our habits and we're trying to change our thought patterns, is we are only mostly aware of our conscious mind. Our conscious mind can only handle so much at once. And we normally do not slow down enough to analyze our subconscious. Most people keep so busy that they don't slow down enough and sit in silence and just shut up for a little while so that they can actually start to analyze their subconscious mind, to analyze their patterns that they have that are happening below the surface. If you want real change, you can't just do it with the conscious mind. You have to dive into the subconscious. And so when you look into the subconscious mind, so let's talk about the subconscious mind for a second. So the subconscious mind is responsible for approximately 95% of our mental activities. It operates automatically. It stores memories, it stores your beliefs, it stores your habits, and you usually operate off of those things. Sometimes it'll just be an immediate action. to when the stove is on, to avoid it with your hand. You don't have to consciously think, I don't want to put my hand on the stove. No, your brain knows that. You've been burned before in different ways. You know to avoid that. But the most important thing that it's responsible for is for regulating your emotions and also carrying out the majority of your daily tasks, because they found that psychologists have found that approximately 50% of what we do is basically on autopilot. Like, we're not really paying attention. If you've ever driven home from work and you were going to stop and get some milk, and then you get home and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even stop and get milk. And you're like, wait, I don't even really remember driving home. Yeah, because your subconscious mind, your autopilot was working. And so our subconscious has a massive, massive impact on our lives. And very rarely do people actually dive in and try to focus on it. And so it's really important for us to focus on reprogramming this part of our mind if we want lasting change, because that's where our habits, that's where our beliefs are all stored. And so you have to understand that there's, throughout the day, millions of bits of processing happening every second in your mind below your conscious thought of, hey, maybe I should go and pick up coffee on the way to work, right? That's your conscious mind. But below that, there's millions of bits of processing happening every single second below that conscious mind. Below conscious, subconscious, that's what it means. So if you're not paying attention to it, you usually don't even notice the subconscious. And sometimes your brain will, say, for instance, react to a person or a location or a smell, and you didn't even notice it happen until after it happens. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't even notice that I just did that. Your subconscious reacts. And then a lot of times your mind, your conscious mind, catches up. A lot of times it's an immediate thing. It's an immediate thought, automatic thoughts, automatic feelings. And then your mind, your conscious mind is like, oh, okay, I see what we just did. Like if I tell you right now, focus on your right thumb. Your brain was processing your right thumb this entire time I've been speaking, but it was filtering it out so that you could be listening to me, so that you could think of something else, so that you could be driving your car. It wasn't thinking about your right thumb. But when I tell you right now, hey, think about your right thumb, you can go from subconsciously processing, your brain is processing your right thumb at all points in time, it's just filtering it out, to now you can actually start to pay attention to it. And so really what you have to understand is the mind. So before we start to change our mind, we've got to understand the conscious, we've got to understand the subconscious. Once again, subconscious is 95% of our processing throughout the day. That's 19 times stronger than the 5% conscious mind. And so you've got to start to understand it to change your brain. Now, a lot of people, if you're just newer in self-development, are going to be like, but I've been this way my entire life. I just am this way. Well, you can change yourself at any moment. You can change your brain at any moment. And there's a science behind it. It's called neuroplasticity. Neuroscience has proven that our brains are not hardwired forever. The phrase, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, is you can teach an old dog new tricks. It might take longer because it's an old dog and an old brain, but anyone can learn and change themselves at any moment. So we have to understand that. And so the changing of your brain and the adaptation of your brain is known as neuroplasticity. It is super important. I have an entire chapter of it in my book, Level Up. It's chapter 11, where I literally dive into neuroplasticity and how to actually change your brain. And when you change your brain, it means that your brain can form new connections and reorganize existing ones. And so what that does is that allows you to learn new skills. It allows you to change your habits. It allows you to change your limiting beliefs, anything that might be existing. And so like if you're a negative person, like I used to be a very, very negative person, and I hated it. I was very pessimistic. I could find the holes in anything. And I just didn't like being that person. And for a long time, it was just very easy for me to be negative. Something would pop up. I would be negative, whatever it was. And I consciously had to take years of trying to change it, trying to reprogram myself, trying to change it. And it's really hard for me to be pessimistic at this point. It's hard for me to not try to find a silver lining in something, no matter what it is that happens. And so it doesn't happen right away, but it allows you to be able to change, because in neuroscience, the most famous phrase in neuroscience is neurons that fire together, wire together. Your neurons just send electrical signals between each other. And so when they say fire together, that means send electrical signals to each other. So there's parts of your brain that are quote unquote the negative alleys that are just very easy for your brain to go down that alley. And so you might not really have much of a positive alley for your brain to go down. But if you start working on it and trying to find the good and trying to find the good and trying to find the good and stop paying attention to the negative, it'll actually weaken the signal between the negative neurons, quote unquote negative neurons, and start strengthening the signal between the positive neurons, which over time, doing it over and over and over again, repetition is a very key part to what we're going to be talking about here today. If you do it over and over and over again, it makes the actual quote unquote positive neurons, the positive alleyways, much stronger than the negative ones over time. So you might be sitting there and say, so Rob, we can change our brains through neuroplasticity. If we can change our brains through neuroplasticity, can we rewire our brains for success or rewire our brains for happiness or rewire our brains to feel more love or more gratitude? Absolutely. You sure can. And we just need to be very clear on what's happening in our brain at all points in time. We need to become very aware. And so we need to be clear on what thoughts are going on in our heads, what behaviors we have, what habits we have that we need to change in order to eventually change our lives. And so a lot of times, most people are just kind of living their lives unaware. They're kind of just walking zombies. They're not aware and consciously in their self as much as they could be. And so as you start to bring this awareness, you start to notice things about yourself that you can change over time. But if we consistently practice these new patterns, our brains will eventually adopt them and they will become the new norm. And so there's really three parts to this. Before we go into the repatterning and exactly how to do it, but there's three simple parts that I always talk about, right? The first thing is the awareness, right? Number one, what do you want to change about yourself? And what do you want those new things to be? So you've got to become aware. You know what? I'm negative as hell. I'm spewing my negativity and vomiting my negativity all over other people. I don't want to be negative anymore. Okay, what do I want to be? I want to be positive. I want to be grateful. I want to be more loving. Cool. That's awareness. Well, now when you notice yourself start to become more negative and pop up and be negative in moments, awareness needs to come back in. So you have to have the awareness, which is number one. Number two is practice. And number three is repetition. So let me explain it and then we'll dive into it. So awareness, number one. 2, practice. 3, repetition. Awareness, what do I want to change and what do I want to change it to? When I notice myself go down the alley that I don't want to go down. 2, what is my practice? What am I going to do to get myself out of that old awareness that I was in or the old patterns that I was in? And what am I going to change them to? And number 3, repetition. I can do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of times. And eventually you start to just repattern yourself. So awareness, what is it that you want to change? And you become aware in the moment. Practice, what am I going to do? So let's say that your awareness is that you are very judgmental and you don't want to be judgmental anymore. Okay, cool. Well, then when I notice myself be judgmental, what is my practice? And I've shared this with you before. I've done this where I would found myself being very judgmental. When I would judge somebody, my practice was in that moment, I would force myself to say 3 things that were positive about that person. So awareness, I'm noticing that I'm negative and I'm being judgmental on this person. What is my practice that I've already decided? I'm going to say 3 positive things about this person. And then 3, so that's awareness, practice. Number 3 is repetition. I'm going to do it over and over and over and over and over again every single time I notice myself being judgmental. So that's what you have to understand. Awareness, practice, repetition. Okay. Now, let's talk about the techniques to reprogram your mind. The first one is called cognitive restructuring. Cognitive restructuring is a technique that's used in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, that involves identifying and replacing irrational and negative thoughts with the thoughts that you want. Kind of like what I was just saying right there with, okay, I've noticed that I'm judgmental. Now I need to replace with what I want. And so this process helps you recognize the impact of your thoughts and the patterns that you have on your emotions, on your behaviors, on the world around you, and really starts to equip you with the tools that are necessary to challenge and change those patterns. I've said this many times in the podcast, but when you notice a thought come into your head, get really good at challenging that thought. Like test the validity of that thought. And just start to challenge yourself. Try to see the other side. Try to play devil's advocate for the other side of where you're normally thinking. And so when you start to do cognitive restructuring, it's here's something I've noticed about myself that I don't want anymore. I'm going to identify them and I'm going to replace them in the moment when I notice them pop up with the thoughts that I want. I'm going to do it over and over and over again. And there are tons and tons and tons of studies that have shown the effectiveness of cognitive restructuring in treating a variety of psychological disorders. So like depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder. And so when you actually start to get really good at practicing cognitive restructuring, you can reprogram your mind to think whatever it is you kind of want, more positively, less judgmental, more loving, more grateful, which in turn is going to give you a greater sense of confidence and makes you more likely to take action, which is a cool part about it. So you can't always control your first thought, but you can always control your second thought. And if you change your first thought to your second thought over and over and over and over and over again, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of times, eventually that second thought takes the place of that first thought. So let me say it again. You can't always control your first thought because that's an automatic thought. Cognitive behavioral therapy calls it ANTs, automatic negative thoughts. But you can always, once you become aware of your first thought, control your second thought. Because the first thought is usually subconscious. The second thought requires conscious decision-making in that moment. So like some people I've talked to before in coaching, they're like, I f everything up. I always screw things up, right? And you start to feel down on yourself when you think that. Well, take a step out of your own head, look at yourself and say, is that thought of I'm fuck everything up, is that thought going to support me in doing what I want to? Is it going to support me in growing my business to $1 million this month? No. Okay, replace it with 3 pieces of data that show that you're not a failure. Okay, let me take a step back. And once again, this is awareness and this is practice. It takes a little bit longer. This is why most people don't do it. Okay, I've noticed that I had this thought of I f everything up. That's not going to help me get to where I want to in life. I need to replace that thought, that first thought, with 3 pieces of data that show that I'm not a failure. Okay, number 1, I graduated in the top 20 of my high school. Okay, cool, good for you. What's the second thing? I had a goal of losing 20 pounds last year and I did it. Awesome. I am a incredible father. Okay, perfect. You're doing great. There you go. That's cognitive restructuring. You identify the bad thoughts when they come up and then you replace them. If you want, imagine your mind being a garden. You're the only one that can be tending to this garden. You've got to pull the weeds. Whenever the weeds pop up, you've got to pull the weeds. And that's what we're doing. So that's the first thing, is cognitive restructuring. The second thing is visualization, right? Let's be real. Visualization seems corny. You close your eyes and you think about what it would look like and feel like to achieve your dreams. Okay, hippie, cool. But science has shown many times over and over again this stuff actually works. Visualization is an extremely powerful tool that can be used to reprogram your subconscious mind. Once again, the one that controls 95% of your thoughts and feelings. So it involves creating mental images of whatever it is that you want, the goals, the actions, and then feeling it in your body in this moment. How proud of yourself would you be if you did that, right? So you first have to know what you want in order for you to visualize it though. So like I've always given the example many times of me and my girlfriend at the time, now wife, going to Italy, but I visualized it every single day for 6 months. And then we were in Italy in 6 months. I was like, we're going to be there, we're going to be there, we're going to be there. So I did it for 6 months and then we ended up moving there for 6 months. And so, visualize that house that you want on the beach. How proud of feel in your body how proud of yourself you would be if you did that. Visualize yourself, traveling to Spain with your children and going and seeing the Sagrada Familia or whatever it is that you want to go and see with them. Like visualize yourself there with the people that you want to be there with over and over and over. Like you don't sit down and visualize once. You do it every single morning until you're basically brainwashing yourself into believing that it's possible. Because by visualizing ourselves achieving the goals that we want, we train ourselves to basically believe that it's possible. Because all too often, you're just believing that it's not possible. And that's why you're not taking the action that you could. So when you're visualizing it over and over and over again, you believe it's possible, which in turn increases your motivation. You work harder towards it. You become more committed and you actually achieve what it is that you want. And it's shown over and over and over again that more often than not, we just don't believe in ourselves. And so this is a way that we can start to believe in ourselves and brainwash ourselves into actually believing it's possible. And there's scientific studies that have shown over and over again that visualization improves performance in almost any part of life. There's a study that was published in the Journal of Applied Sports Psychology. They found that athletes who practice visualization experience significant improvements in their performance. And so like participants used imagery as a pre-performance routine, and those that actually used it showed the greatest improvement in their, in this case, was golfing performance. And so they had them visualize making the putt over and over and over again. And then they went out, and the people who had the greatest improvement were the ones who visualized making the putt. So that's number 2. And number 3 is affirmations. Affirmations are just statements that you say to yourself. You are constantly affirming yourself in some sort of way all the time, all day long. Question is, are they positive affirmations or are they negative affirmations? And you repeat them over and over and over again, you actually start to reshape your subconscious beliefs and your thought patterns. You know, and all day long, just do them. After you brush your teeth, do them every single day. In the morning, you do them right after you brush your teeth. In the evening, right after you brush your teeth, do them. Find out what do you want to say to yourself? What is the new thought patterns that you want in your head? Because research on the effectiveness of affirmations revealed that it leads to improvements in self-esteem, into stress reduction, and overall well-being. And there was a study that was published in the Journal of Psychological Science that found that participants who engaged in self-affirmation activities exhibited increased activity in the brain regions associated with self-referential processing, which is means the way that you think about yourself and the way it relates to the outside world and the evaluation of that. And the results show that affirmations have a profound impact on the mental state and contribute to a more positive outlook for people. So you have to brainwash yourself in visualizing what is it you want and also speaking exactly what it is that you want. So you could brainwash yourself into believing whatever it is that you want. Listen, you're here because you know if you want your life to be different, you have to change, right? If you want your life to change, you have to change. But then it starts getting really hard. It's not really easy to change. The key to achieving success in any area of your life comes from your ability to change yourself. And a lot of times changing yourself comes from changing your mind first, reprogramming your mind to change your old patterns, to change your old beliefs, your old programs, and your thoughts, your habits, and your beliefs are your driving forces behind your actions. And that will then determine your outcome. So if you can understand the psychology and the science that's behind mental... Welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to teach you how to get better with your emotional intelligence so that you can improve your life, your relationship to yourself, but also your relationship to other people as well. Let's dive in. You know, when we look at being a human, what's great about being a human and what makes humans different than almost all other animals that are on the planet is our depth of emotions. Now, animals do have emotions. For years, many scientists thought they had no emotions, but the difference between us and most animals is that we have a much deeper level of in depth to our emotions. And the other difference is how we can imagine a fake scenario in the future and get an emotional reaction about that fake future in this moment right now, whether it's a good future that we're imagining, whether it's a bad future that we're imagining. So we can think about how amazing that is. We can think about something, a future that doesn't exist yet, and it can make us feel something right now. That's the depth of our emotions that we can feel. And so today we're going to talk about something called emotional intelligence, which is basically just the ability to identify and understand and manage your emotions, both of your emotions and the emotions of others. And so this is really important for everyone listening. If you're a parent, oh my God, this is super important for you to understand, because if you don't fix this within yourself, you're going to pass it on to your children. So this is important as a parent. If you're a spouse or you have someone you're in a relationship with, this is extremely important to understand. If you're a business owner, this is extremely important for you to understand. This is a skill set that everyone who's listening should want to get better at so that you can make better decisions, you can have better relationships, you can get better with your conflict resolution, and you need to learn how to understand and resolve your emotions. Not act like they don't exist, but how to understand, okay, why am I feeling this way? And if I want to feel this way, great. If I don't want to feel this way, how can I resolve these emotions instead of just sweeping them under the rug like most people tend to do, but actually working through them and understanding them. And there's a lot of experts that say that emotional intelligence is more important than cognitive intelligence when it comes to overall success, overall happiness, and overall well-being. And so a lot of people are trying to improve their cognitive intelligence and put more information in their brain. But in reality, if you want to be more successful, more happy, and have a better well-being, you need to actually improve at your emotional intelligence. But unfortunately, unlike IQ, emotional intelligence is not something that people really focus on most of the time. People are like, oh, I want to get smarter. I want to get more intelligent. But yeah, what about emotional intelligence? And so when you look at it, emotional intelligence is something that you can improve. IQ really isn't something that you can improve. And so if you can improve it, it is kind of a skill set, which is why I call emotional intelligence a skill set. And so we're going to go through basically a 3-step process to help you develop your emotional intelligence. So the first one is self-awareness, is to understand yourself, understand your emotions. I feel like I talk about self-awareness pretty much every episode at some point. And the reason why is because I think that it might be the most important skill for someone to have. Because you cannot change something that you're not aware of. So if I'm not aware of how my emotions are affecting me and affecting other people around me, then I can't change it. But as soon as I become aware of something, well, then now I can change it. On top of that, I feel like there's so much technology and so much stimuli, and there's phones and there's TVs and there's Netflix and there's social medias and there's ads everywhere, that most people have just become so unaware of themselves because they're always focusing on the outside. They're always focusing on what's going on around them, around their phone and around their TVs and work. Very few people, I feel like nowadays, take time to actually look in the mirror and go within. And so in turn, because of the fact that there's so few people that are doing that, a lot of people are very just unaware of themselves. And if you're unaware of your deep unconscious reactions, then you're not going to be able to fix them. So many people are just out there just unaware of their deep unconscious reactions and actions, and they don't know how it's affecting themselves. They don't know how it's affecting other people around them. And it's kind of like I always say, like when you're in the jar, you can't read the label. You've got to get out of the jar every once in a while and look back at yourself and say, what's going on with this Rob guy? Is he happy? Is he fulfilled? Is he, are there certain aspects of him that maybe we could change to make him even better? And so that's really this aspect of self-awareness. It's the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. You can't become more emotionally intelligent if you don't even know what's going on inside of your own head and inside of your own body. And so you have to understand it's the capacity to recognize and understand your own emotions, your motivations, your behaviors, your patterns, all of that. How it's affecting you, how it's affecting others. We all have patterns, but the question really comes down to, are you aware of your patterns? And so it means like, are you aware of what you're feeling? Are you aware of why you're feeling that way? Are you aware of how those emotions can affect your decisions and actions? Are you aware how those emotions and decisions and actions are affecting other people around you? I always say that if everybody on this earth had extreme self-awareness, the whole world would be better. Everything would be better if people were just extremely aware of themselves. And so then you start to ask yourself, well, how do I become more aware of myself then? One of the things I think is really important is journaling for stress management. So I recommend getting a stress journal. And this is going to sound kind of weird, but it's just a small journal. It can fit in your pocket, and just keep it in your back pocket and just write stuff down, okay? The reason why this works really well is because a stress journal really helps you identify your triggers. It helps you understand your emotional responses more and eventually develop coping mechanisms to help you work through it. And so the idea is to learn yourself. And so, you sit down, you ask yourself, what is triggering you? How do you feel? Why do you feel that way? What can you do about it? So it's like, I'm aware I'm pissed off right now. Okay, let me get my journal out. What's making me pissed off right now? Well, this is what's making me pissed off. Why do I feel this way? How do I feel? What can I do about it right now? And you will learn more about yourself than you've ever known if you do this. You'll start to see triggers because you'll get so clear by writing it down, by taking it out of your head and taking it out of your body and writing it down. You'll start to see the triggers before they come up so that you can navigate your life better. And you'll develop coping mechanisms when you do get stressed out. And so what I recommend for people is when you're triggered, get curious. Hey, real quick, I want to introduce you to something called Mindset Mentor Plus. If you love this podcast, you will absolutely love what I'm about to talk about. I designed Mindset Mentor Plus to help you actively integrate every one of these episodes into your life. And here's how it works. With every episode of this podcast that comes out, Mindset Mentor Plus subscribers get more. You're going to get multiple page, detailed, printable worksheets, effectively a mini masterclass that's way more in depth than just this podcast. They also come with journaling questions, questions, challenges, assignments, and so much more, so that you're not just listening to these podcasts passively, but you're actively integrating them into your life. That way you improve much faster. I also do monthly Q&A sessions in there and much, much more. If you want to learn more about it, go to mindsetmentor.com or click the link that's down in the description. When you're triggered by somebody, by something, by a circumstance, get curious. Write down on a pen and paper, just start asking yourself questions about what's going on. There shouldn't be any judgment. Instead, it's like, take a really compassionate and curious approach to yourself. And this journaling can be a really good emotional release as well. So you can dump all of your feelings onto a piece of paper and start to work through them. Because when it's in your head, it's really hard to work through things. When it's on paper, you can plan it out. You can start to work through it. And as I say, I've said it many times in this podcast, everything in this world is figure-outable. So, figure-outable is probably not a real word, but everything is figure-outable. So if it's emotions you want to work through, you can figure out. If it's thoughts you want to work through, you can figure it out. And so sometimes you just need to slow down and you just need to be in the moment, not run from everything. Sometimes the subconscious brings up automatic thoughts that we don't even recognize a lot of times. We usually don't recognize the thought. We just recognize how we're feeling. So it's like, okay, let me take out my journal. Let me write down, what am I feeling right now? I'm feeling pissed. Okay, cool. Nothing wrong with that. Every emotion is welcome at some point in time. We have emotions for reasons. Okay, well, what is this? What am I pissed about? What is this being pissed trying to tell me? Why am I feeling this way? And then another really good thing, if you, this is a hard one, but if you really, really want to learn yourself, start asking people around you what they notice about you. Because they notice things about you, patterns, ways that you react that you don't even notice. And so you think you know yourself, but a lot of times you don't know yourself until you start getting feedback from other people. And then you're like, oh my God, that hurts, but they're right. So I would recommend just every once in a while, just ask people that you really trust, people that you love, whether it's friends, family members, whatever it might be, for feedback. Just be like, hey, what do you think I need to work on? What do you think are my downsides? What do you think is good about me? What do you think is bad about me? How can I get better? Are there, triggers or emotions that you think I need to work through? And they might be able to give you some insights about your emotions that you are completely unaware of. And when they say it, you'll go, oof, that hurts, but it resonates. So it must be something I need to work through. So that is the first thing, is you need to get really good at your self-awareness to start to understand yourself, because you can't change anything that you're not aware of. The second thing after self-awareness is self-regulation. Okay, now that I am aware of my emotions, how do I regulate my emotions? Some people out there listening have really short fuses, or, you have a really long fuse, but then when you blow up, you blow up. And so we're not taught how to self-soothe by our parents. We're not really, most people are not taught emotions by their parents at all, or very well. A lot of people who are angry because your parents were angry. So self-soothing is really, really natural. Like babies naturally suck on their thumbs. They naturally want a pacifier. And when they do, they calm down so much. It's crazy to see. Young children, what do they have to help them self-soothe? Sometimes they have a stuffed animal they bring around. Sometimes it's a blanket that they carry around. As adults, we still need to self-soothe. I just don't recommend that you suck your thumb or bring a blanket around with you everywhere you go, right? We're not taught how to do it. Because frankly, if I'm being completely honest, most people's parents are not good at their own emotions, and they don't know how to work through them. And it's not their own fault. This isn't something that was taught. Like my parents' parents had to go through the, Great Depression. Like they weren't really thinking about their emotions when they were trying to survive and trying to eat and feed their family, right? So I want you to understand that. So it's like, maybe we should just become the more evolved generation at this point in time and start figuring out how to self-soothe ourselves, because maybe our parents didn't really understand emotions because they were never taught by their parents how to understand emotions, because their parents never taught them. And it's just a vicious cycle until somebody decides to break it, which hopefully is us. And so self-soothing is just a practice to be able to get yourself from a heightened state, pissed, emotional, crying, whatever it might be, to a calm and relaxed state. It is being able to regulate your emotional state regardless of whatever circumstances are happening. Okay. And so how do we really start to develop this self-soothing and start to work through this, right? First thing you want to do is get better at pausing before you react. When you feel a really strong emotion, especially a negative one, don't react immediately. And you might say, oh my God, Rob, but I don't know how to not react. Well, there is a space, there is a second. Like Viktor Frankl, who was a psychologist, he wrote an incredible book called Man's Search for Meaning. I recommend everyone read it. And he was an incredible psychologist who lived through living in Nazi prison camps. He lived in Auschwitz. He saw the worst things that could possibly happen to humans. And what he says is, he has this my favorite quote of his says, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our responses. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So when you notice, oh my gosh, I'm about to feel an emotion, I can feel. Welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to teach you how to get better with your emotional intelligence so that you can improve your life, your relationship to yourself, but also your relationship to other people as well. Let's dive in. You know, when we look at being a human, what's great about being a human and what makes humans different than almost all other animals that are on the planet is our depth of emotions. Now, animals do have emotions. For years, many scientists thought they had no emotions, but the difference between us and most animals is that we have a much deeper level of in depth to our emotions. And the other difference is how we can imagine a fake scenario in the future and get an emotional reaction about that fake future in this moment right now, whether it's a good future that we're imagining, whether it's a bad future that we're imagining. So we can think about how amazing that is. We can think about something, a future that doesn't exist yet, and it can make us feel something right now. That's the depth of our emotions that we can feel. And so today we're going to talk about something called emotional intelligence, which is basically just the ability to identify and understand and manage your emotions, both of your emotions and the emotions of others. And so this is really important for everyone listening. If you're a parent, oh my God, this is super important for you to understand, because if you don't fix this within yourself, you're going to pass it on to your children. So this is important as a parent. If you're a spouse or you have someone you're in a relationship with, this is extremely important to understand. If you're a business owner, this is extremely important for you to understand. This is a skill set that everyone who's listening should want to get better at so that you can make better decisions, you can have better relationships, you can get better with your conflict resolution, and you need to learn how to understand and resolve your emotions. Not act like they don't exist, but how to understand, okay, why am I feeling this way? And if I want to feel this way, great. If I don't want to feel this way, how can I resolve these emotions instead of just sweeping them under the rug like most people tend to do, but actually working through them and understanding them. And there's a lot of experts that say that emotional intelligence is more important than cognitive intelligence when it comes to overall success, overall happiness, and overall well-being. And so a lot of people are trying to improve their cognitive intelligence and put more information in their brain. But in reality, if you want to be more successful, more happy, and have a better well-being, you need to actually improve at your emotional intelligence. But unfortunately, unlike IQ, emotional intelligence is not something that people really focus on most of the time. People are like, oh, I want to get smarter. I want to get more intelligent. But yeah, what about emotional intelligence? And so when you look at it, emotional intelligence is something that you can improve. IQ really isn't something that you can improve. And so if you can improve it, it is kind of a skill set, which is why I call emotional intelligence a skill set. And so we're going to go through basically a 3-step process to help you develop your emotional intelligence. So the first one is self-awareness, is to understand yourself, understand your emotions. I feel like I talk about self-awareness pretty much every episode at some point. And the reason why is because I think that it might be the most important skill for someone to have. Because you cannot change something that you're not aware of. So if I'm not aware of how my emotions are affecting me and affecting other people around me, then I can't change it. But as soon as I become aware of something, well, then now I can change it. On top of that, I feel like there's so much technology and so much stimuli, and there's phones and there's TVs and there's Netflix and there's social medias and there's ads everywhere, that most people have just become so unaware of themselves because they're always focusing on the outside. They're always focusing on what's going on around them, around their phone and around their TVs and work. Very few people, I feel like nowadays, take time to actually look in the mirror and go within And so in turn, because of the fact that there's so few people that are doing that, a lot of people are very just unaware of themselves. And if you're unaware of your deep unconscious reactions, then you're not gonna be able to fix them. So many people are just out there just unaware of their deep unconscious reactions and actions, and they don't know how it's affecting themselves. They don't know how it's affecting other people around them. And it's kind of like I always say, like when you're in the jar, you can't read the label. You've got to get out of the jar every once in a while and look back at yourself and say, what's going on with this Rob guy? Is he happy? Is he fulfilled? Is he, are there certain aspects of him that maybe we could change to make him even better? And so that's really this aspect of self-awareness. It's the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. You can't become more emotionally intelligent if you don't even know what's going on inside of your own head and inside of your own body. And so you have to understand it's the capacity to recognize and understand your own emotions, your motivations, your behaviors, your patterns. Have you ever felt like you're just trying to control everything? You're trying to hold the whole world together with your bare hands. You're always managing or planning and fixing and overthinking everything. Well, chances are if you clicked on this episode, there is a chance, a small chance that you might have some control issues. I want you to understand, I have identified with myself years ago that I had control issues. And this was back in 2017 when I really identified that I had control issues. And I had this big awareness and I started working more on myself. And I had this awareness that I had control issues because when you look at my entire childhood, if you were to put one word over my childhood with having a father who was an alcoholic and passing away when I was 15 and all of that, the word over my childhood would be uncertainty. And the only way to fix uncertainty is to try to control everything. But I had this realization that if I try to control everything, it's going to ruin almost everything in my life. It's going to ruin my relationships. It's going to ruin my business, all of that. And so I started really working on my control issues. That made me better at delegation in my business, which I don't think that anywhere near the amount of success we would have in my business if I had not worked on my control issues, because I was really bad at delegating. I was really bad at micromanaging as well. And I also don't think that I would have the relationship that I have now with my wife if I didn't get better at fixing my control issues and opening myself up to being more vulnerable. And I want you to realize that control issues are behavioral adaptations that you learn in childhood. More than anything else, it's a protection mechanism that protected you in some sort of way. A survival strategy that started in childhood long before you ever had the words for it or knew what you were doing. You just unconsciously created this mechanism. And it's a coping mechanism. It's not like a character flaw. And I want you to understand that. So if you say, I'm a very controlling person, it's not a character flaw, it's a coping mechanism. Control issues don't just show up out of nowhere in adulthood. They are often early behavioral adaptations of a child that was in an environment that felt unsafe or unpredictable or emotionally chaotic. And so as a child, your brain had to figure out some way to make sense of the world. And when adults around you were inconsistent, whether they were emotionally unavailable or maybe they were severely overwhelmed themselves, what you did was an intelligent thing to do that any sensitive kid would do. You took on control on yourself unconsciously as a way to feel safe. You did not feel safe, so you had to create some sense of safety on your own. So let's pause here because it's a really big deal for you to understand. Children are wired to adapt. We're all wired to adapt. If the environment feels emotionally or physically unstable or unsafe, the child doesn't think to themselves, my parent is unsafe. Most of the time, the child thinks to themselves, I must do something to fix this. That's the innocence of childhood. Children tend to blame themselves so that they can keep the parental attachment intact. This is the reason why a lot of times when parents get divorced, children think it's their fault. Is because a lot of times, have you ever felt like you're just trying to control everything? You're trying to hold the whole world together with your bare hands. You're always managing or planning and fixing and overthinking everything. Well, chances are if you clicked on this episode, there is a chance, a small chance that you might have some control issues. I want you to understand, I have identified with myself years ago that I had control issues. And this was back in 2017 when I really identified that I had control issues. And I had this big awareness and I started working more on myself. And I had this awareness that I had control issues because when you look at my entire childhood, if you were to put one word over my childhood with having a father who was an alcoholic and passing away when I was 15 and all of that, the word over my childhood would be uncertainty. And the only way to fix uncertainty is to try to control everything. But I had this realization that if I try to control everything, it's going to ruin almost everything in my life. It's going to ruin my relationships. It's going to ruin my business, all of that. And so I started really working on my control issues. That made me better at delegation in my business, which I don't think that anywhere near the amount of success we would have in my business if I had not worked on my control issues, because I was really bad at delegating. I was really bad at micromanaging as well. And I also don't think that I would have the relationship that I have now with my wife if I didn't get better at fixing my control issues and opening myself up to being more vulnerable. And I want you to realize that control issues are behavioral adaptations that you learn in childhood. More than anything else, it's a protection mechanism that protected you in some sort of way. A survival strategy that started in childhood long before you ever had the words for it or knew what you were doing. You just unconsciously created this mechanism. And it's a coping mechanism. It's not like a character flaw. And I want you to understand that. So if you say, I'm a very controlling person, it's not a character flaw, it's a coping mechanism. Control issues don't just show up out of nowhere in adulthood. They are often early behavioral adaptations of a child that was in an environment that felt unsafe or unpredictable or emotionally chaotic. And so as a child, your brain had to figure out some way to make sense of the world. And when adults around you were inconsistent, whether they were emotionally unavailable or maybe they were severely overwhelmed themselves, what you did was an intelligent thing to do that any sensitive kid would do. You took on control on yourself unconsciously as a way to feel safe. You did not feel safe, so you had to create some sense of safety on your own. So let's pause here because it's a really big deal for you to understand. Children are wired to adapt. We're all wired to adapt. If the environment feels emotionally or physically unstable or unsafe, the child doesn't think to themselves, my parent is unsafe. Most of the time, the child thinks to themselves, I must do something to fix this. That's the innocence of childhood. Children tend to blame themselves so that they can keep the parental attachment intact. This is the reason why a lot of times when parents get divorced, children think it's their fault, is because a lot of times they put it on themselves. That's the innocence of childhood. And so I want you to understand that if you were in a situation that was maybe unsafe or unpredictable or, had parents that were emotionally absent, a lot of times you don't think, it's the parent's fault. You unconsciously think, I must fix this. So there's something wrong with me. And so we blame ourselves a lot of times so that we can keep that parental attachment intact. So what does control look like when it's a child's tool for surviving chaos? Well, it could be something like being the good kid so that you don't rock the boat. It could be monitoring everyone's mood before speaking. It could be keeping your space really tidy because you feel like something was unstable. It could be trying to fix everyone else's problems that weren't yours to fix. It could be becoming a people pleaser so that peace was kept in the house and nobody fought in any sort of way. This wasn't about being mature for your age, which I know many of us hear when our children, they're such a good child. They're so mature for their age. Really what this is hypervigilance disguised as responsibility. Think about that for a second. A child at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old isn't necessarily responsible, but they become responsible as a way to keep the peace or as a way to feel more safe around everything that's happening. And it worked for a while. In your childhood, it worked because you built it in some sort of way. And once again, the child is not consciously building this. The child is unconsciously building this. But what's really important is just because something was useful in the past doesn't mean that it's serving you right now. What protected you back then, a lot of times traps you now. Because as an adult, this strategy kind of morphs and changes into perfectionism, or micromanaging other people, or anxiety when things aren't planned out, or the inability to trust others to quote unquote do it right, or guilt when you're not on top of everything, or becoming a helicopter parent. Control, 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 control. That's how it morphs from childhood into adulthood. And when you control other people, what does it feel like? To the other person, it feels like being smothered. It's not that you love control, it's that your nervous system associates control with safety. And that's what it really comes down to. This is deeper than habits and character traits. It's a wiring that happened in childhood. It's the operating system that's underneath your adult life. The little inner child inside of you never healed from what it went through. So it keeps doing what it's always done. And like any other outdated system, eventually an outdated system starts glitching in some way. So you try to rest, but you feel like you're wasting time. You ask for help, but then you redo something that somebody else did because it's not quote unquote perfect. You say you say, oh, I trust you. But then your body really doesn't. It says otherwise. And here's the truth. It's not about being a type A person. It's a trauma response in disguise. And so it shows up many different ways in your life. In relationships, it can ruin relationships. You might avoid vulnerability. You keep emotional walls up because letting go is really risky in some way. You fear being maybe too much or not enough for another person. So you kind of perform and be the person that you think they want you to be versus being yourself. You try to anticipate needs of other people before they're ever spoken to keep the peace. Or you manage other people's emotions while ignoring your own. Or you're a people pleaser and you forget all about yourself. Or you call someone over and over and over and over again because you haven't heard from them in 2 hours. This is how control problems will ruin relationships. How does it show up in work? Well, maybe you've got this idea of you've got to perform, you've got to overwork, you've got to over deliver, not to be great, but to not disappoint. You don't just meet expectations, you obsess over exceeding expectations. And the validation that you get from others at work becomes a substitute for the connection that you can't feel. And you can't seem to, you go on vacation and you're with your family and you just can't seem to turn it off. So you're checking emails and you're on your phone. You can't seem to turn it off because you feel like there's something else you're supposed to be doing at all points in time, right? That's a coping mechanism. How does it show up in parenting? Well, maybe you try to be the perfect parent or, redo what your parents didn't get right. Or maybe you set really impossibly high standards for yourself. And then when you don't hit those standards, you beat yourself up over and over and over again. Maybe you say you want to protect your children from the chaos that you knew, but sometimes you forget that chaos isn't always harmful. Sometimes it's needed to grow. Or maybe you try to control every single part of your child's life. And as they grow older, you start to notice how they start resenting you for it. How does it show up in your own relationship with yourself and your self-talk? Well, everything is either your fault or your responsibility. And you beat yourself up over a lot of things. You struggle to rest without feeling guilty about it. And even your internal voice sometimes sounds like a disappointed parent. Why didn't you do more? You should have seen that coming. You can't let anybody down. Any of this sound familiar? It's exhausting. And more importantly, it's not really your fault. It was what you had to do to feel safe as a child. But now that you're an adult, you're allowed to rewrite it. And that's what's really important. And so why is your brain wired this way? Well, here's where neuroscience really comes in. Your developing brain in childhood is built around adapting to the environment for survival. When unpredictability was the norm, your brain learned, if I can anticipate or control everything, then I'll be safe. And so it creates this feedback loops of being over controlling. And because you're over controlling, you get a brief sense of safety. You feel like you're controlling everything. Everything's okay for right now. Then the world feels unpredictable again. And then you feel the need for more control. And it's these feedback loops of more control and more control. And over time, you become more controlling. It's not just a mindset that's behind all this. It's biology behind it. And your amygdala, which is the fear center of your brain, becomes hyperactive early in life because of all of the chaos. Your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision making, for logic, for emotional regulation, struggles to develop in environments that are full of stress. And over time, your body becomes the control system, not your conscious mind. And so it's not about being a control freak. If you'd be like, oh, I'm a control freak, that's just the way I am, or someone says that you're a control freak. It's about your nervous system doing its best with really, really outdated software. You might be 40 years old, and this is something that you developed when you were 7. The thing that's really important behind this that I really want to talk about is we're talking about being a child here. And we're talking about the fact that you develop this system, I guess you could say, of control in your childhood because you did not feel safe in some way. And so you had to develop this control issue so that you could feel safe. Here's the hardest part of all of it. Beneath all of this urge to control, a lot of times for most people is often grief. Grief for the childhood that you didn't get. Grief for the caretakers who couldn't show up. Grief for the safety that you had to create instead of receiving, which is what children should receive as a child. And when we finally stop and ask, why do I feel responsible for everything? We start, or whatever it might be that kind of cracks us open, we begin to realize, oh my God, that little kid just didn't feel safe in some ways. Like, how sad is that? And it gives you a chance to really crack yourself open and to mourn what you might not have had and how you had to grow up too soon. And that's really when you start healing, is when you allow yourself to feel those feelings. Because in that moment, we stop blaming ourselves for how we are now, and we start realizing, oh, that was just something that I had to develop in childhood. And so we begin seeing our, control issues for what they are, which is love in some way, longing for a better relationship, wanting more protection, the simple case of just trying to feel safe. And so you start to realize, oh my gosh, what I need to do is actually develop a better relationship with that child who didn't have the safety that it actually wanted. And so what you learn to do as you start to shift from control to something else, what do you shift to? You shift to trust, which is what it really looks like, because, and that's really where it gets hard, because you most likely developed your control issues because you couldn't trust who was raising you in some ways as a child. And so now you've got to switch from control to trust. And healing doesn't mean that you become like totally chill overnight. What it means is that you're rewiring what safety means to you. You learn to teach your nervous system that it's okay to relax, that you don't have to be hypervigilant in every single moment, that you can, you can exhale at some point in time without having to earn it. You start to learn at work that you can delegate. Oh my gosh. It could be delegation at work. It could be delegation with your children. It could be delegation with your family, that you don't have to do everything. And you can start to let people see the real you